Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Land Use Committee meeting here on Friday, November 3rd.
Recording in progress.
We are going to go ahead and get started this morning with an update from our housing navigator.
Good morning. I'm sorry, I'm a little hoarse. I'll start with an update on the ADU handbook. The architecture design is progressing. It's nearly complete. The site design is started. We've completed some visual inventory. So the idea now is we're going to take these templates and apply them into a bird's eye, and then we'll have visual examples of different types of ADUs that could be done. What's been interesting with development of the ADU handbook is that I attended a meeting with other housing navigators and representatives of the banking industry for a roundtable discussion about what types of financing options may be made available to people with ADUs that want to develop ADUs that are and are not in the marketplace. So it was very informative. It was a nice outreach of the bank, and there was a lot of ideas, and that's something that's going to be rolled into the handbook. Hopefully there'll be new type of lending options that with this current interest rate, everybody knows it's very challenging to build an ADU, much less any other type of home right now.
Was there a gentleman there from Northeast Credit Union?
What, sorry?
Was there a gentleman in that roundtable from the Northeast Credit Union?
No.
Because there was one speaking on a panel with me yesterday. I can get you his name, and we specifically were talking about ADUs, and he was talking about financing option packages that Northeast Credit Union is doing for ADUs. So
that'd be
might
helpful.
be worth reaching out to. I can get you his information.
In the public engagement side of things, we're developing a public engagement process right now. When I say we, it's the City of Portsmouth, as me as the housing navigator, along with Portsmouth Listens. And so we're setting up a structure right now. We have a tentative schedule to start things in January. And so we're trying to develop the marketing and branding material right now so the public is noticed well in advance of the kickoff event, as well as either 3 or 4 roundtable study groups, and then hopefully scheduling a joint presentation meeting between City Council and Planning Board sometime in February.
Awesome.
That
Exciting.
effort is rolling into, and the public improvement engagement plan that was a charge from the Land Use Committee is being rolled into it. So there's a nexus that I'm trying to make sure stays connected.
Awesome. Anything else? Questions? Go ahead.
I just have a question about that. So what's the goal? What's the goal of those sessions?
Don't forget to talk into your microphones, people.
Thank you, Howard. What's the goal of those Portsmouth Listens sessions, and when did you say they would?
Right now,
starting in January and ending
in February. That's the tentative schedule right now. The structure of the public engagement process is to reach out to the public and get an understanding of their perceptions, experiences on what we're referring to as places to live, different types of housing, where the housing is. And through dialogue and discussions, the resulting information is going to roll into my effort, as well as the Planning and Sustainability Department's effort, to make recommendations and suggestions and provide strategies for regulatory and non-regulatory changes that could occur to improve housing in terms of inventory locations. And regulatory would be an example of what we're going to be talking about a little bit later on today in terms of zoning. Non-regulatory may be some policies through the council and the city and other departments about how to improve housing for residents and those that want to move here as well.
Any other questions for our housing navigator? Go ahead.
Did you say that you were working on, you mentioned templates? Are those housing templates or are those?
Right. What we're doing right now in terms of the design of those templates is to provide in the handbook an example of an attached ADU or a detached ADU that isn't necessarily meant to be, well, here you go, you're going to get approved. It's here's an example of one that could be done, so they can understand room sizes, bedroom sizes, and how things may be able to fit into it.
Something you could take to a builder?
You could decide if that type of ADU would work for your situation, and then take it, you can get some pricing on it and understand what needs to change from it and so forth. But it wasn't, there's many other cities that have, especially out in California, have provided a book. It's almost a menu of different ADUs that you can buy and put in your backyard. This won't be it because there's such a variety in character in Portsmouth.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
almost been a challenge.
That's the pre-approved plans that Seattle actually, I think, was one of the first places that actually did that. We looked at that early on. We just knew that the complications with the different neighborhoods in Portsmouth would make it very hard to have a standard set of plans that would work everywhere. So we thought that would be a longer-term conversation, and maybe the next round of changes that happen to our ADU.
So you're just talking about a box, so, and it's.
But not everyone
really
even has a backyard to put a box in.
An
An ADU. So,
An example that we're doing in terms of one of these templates is there are many two-car garages around, and most of those tend to be a 24 by 26 size. So we've taken that as a lead of what could be done. This is what you could do if you just wanted to convert the garage.
oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
And just as an update on the ADUs, Howard was nice enough to share a spreadsheet he has where he tracks all the ADU applications, and we actually have doubled the amount of applications from 2022 to 2023. So I think that's positive, that we actually, with just what the changes we have made, and we haven't even finished, that we've actually gotten twice the applications in, so.
Yeah, I think that's a very positive sign. Obviously, there's a lot of variables that come into this, as we said, as building costs and the market and other things. But I think it's really good that we learn best practices from other communities and, other people that are trying to solve the same solution or solve the same problem.
Anything else? All right, then we will move on and we'll start our discussion on the gateway zoning, or I should say continue our discussion on the gateway zoning. We had talked and had a huge over 50 sort of property list, and then we broke it down at our last meeting to about, half that might be a longer conversation and half that might be a shorter conversation. So the document that I sent out and that was posted on the website has about 20-something, I think, properties. What? 28, thank you. Can't remember. And I just broke it down. Everyone had asked about seeing actual maps. So one of them, a little sort of picture of a map of each of these lots shows just the aerial view, and one also shows the wetlands, because I figured that is always important to know whether or not, the whole lot is covered in wetlands or whether or not there's actually buildable areas in them and where those buildable areas are. So the first that has at the top of our list is the 126 Lang Road, which is about just over 26 acres, almost 27 acres, and it's in the Garden Apartment Mobile Home. And we had talked about switching it to Gateway 1. I don't think there's been any objection to that from most people have agreed that seems to make sense, and that should be put, because what I'm looking for at the end of this is to get a list that we actually move forward so that City Council can then refer it to the Planning Board and we can start that whole process piece of it. So if we have any objections to the ones on this list, then we'll just do the unobjectionable property, shall we say. If there's nothing of that, the next one we talked about is the, yep.
Before we proceed, Peter Stith, myself, and Peter Britz have sat down and reviewed these as well, both with the context of this as well as zoning districts that are next to it as well. So when we have input, we've taken that in consideration as well to either provide a better transition between zones, or it meets what should be for the zone, so.
Yeah, and on this one specifically, the garden apartment manufactured home, or mobile home as it used to be called, I guess, is the district that abuts this. So I don't know if you guys talked about that as in the discussion. Both zones would provide opportunity for more housing, G1 or.
Right. They both provide about the same amount of housing, but it also provides that mix that we
mix,
can
yep.
do. And I think it just provides a little bit more opportunity than just apartments. So I think that was the goal of that. Next on the list then is the Freedom Circle. Once again, also garden apartment mobile home. And we were just really talking about that front section, maybe not the whole lot, I think when it was first brought up. There are several other properties that we previously just took sort of sections of a lot and changed the zoning. And that one currently is in the garden apartment mobile home as well. But we thought that lot before the actual buildings that's up by the road could be transitioned, so if somebody wanted to put even a business or, you know, something to service them, that could be done in that area.
So should we shrink the graphic down to just show that, or add another
We can
highlight?
ask that going forward, but that was our intention, and I can certainly make that note when we move it forward, that it would be the part before the buildings, or maybe we should include the buildings, it should be the whole lot. I guess I would look for all of you to.
What's with is the rear wet?
Yes, yeah. Once you get much past the buildings,
Yeah.
there's not a whole lot more developable space back
Let's say
there.
you do the whole lot. I mean,
Do the
yeah,
whole
the
lot.
whole lot.
And we,
Just in case somebody wanted to redevelop it at some point, and
Yeah, he's looking at it right there, right
this
now.
one here, we looked, just to add, we looked at the front piece by itself, that's 4.5 acres right there.
So we'll make that the whole lot then. And maybe there'll be an objection moving forward and that changes over time, but at least that would be our recommendation moving forward. The next property is the 2300 Lafayette Road, which is a huge parcel. For anyone that doesn't know, this is water country. It's a huge parcel, and this is actually sitting in multiple zones at the moment. I think it's 2 or 3 zones.
To that.
Yeah, I know, it's difficult to go back and forth.
It's a little,
It's G1 right up by the road. It's industrial in the back.
Where the parking is.
Yeah, all right, the rest is industrial. So, yeah, so it's G1 and industrial, but it is surrounded on the left-hand side by all G1.
right.
Yeah,
So are we
This
talking
is
about making
the whole parcel.
the whole parcel?
So this is,
Part of it is now just extending it into the whole parcel.
would that
yeah.
mean you couldn't do industrial there?
I don't think you could do light industrial. There's certainly that, because I remember I didn't get a chance to do the whole back and forth as far as looking at
Yeah.
industrial to that. It was on my list, and sorry, I ran out of time. But I did ask your other question of the tax assessor about whether or not when we change the zoning of a property, if the taxes automatically go up, and that's not the case. If they take advantage of the additional zoning and the property use changes, yes, then their tax assessment and value would change.
I was just, particularly with that parcel, that took a lot of industrial land out of the mix, you know, out of our inventory. So I would hate to see it go to G1, then you'd not be able to do industrial there in the future.
Right, but
So,
there is still industrial all behind it as well.
Yeah.
Also,
but-
that also brings up the idea of performance standards and as opposed to definitions. I think we've talked about this a little bit before.
Rick, pull your microphone in.
Classic definition of industrial is a little bit different than what industrial is today, and, you know, performance-based zoning, which we probably should talk about, and will talk about at the planning board, I'm sure, or, you know, what's happening inside a building you and I might call it industrial today. 20 years ago, probably wouldn't have been called industrial, would have been called assembly or something, you know, less than that. So I think it's almost a binary problem of having industrial or not, whereas maybe there should be a gradation and allowing some things that have a better transition between more housing-related things we're talking about and the harder industrial uses. So,
Yeah, no, I understand. I just hate to see that go away as some kind of, maybe it's not industrial, light
Do you see a
industrial
need,
or-
as a broker, do you see a need for that? Do you get a lot of
Absolutely.
people looking, asking for sites?
Yes, and there aren't any.
Banfield Road has a lot of them.
I can just
So,
add,
anyway,
I
just
can just
think,
add that
for the future, it would be good to have that option.
Peter would like to address it.
just to answer your initial question, is industrial allowed? It isn't allowed by special exception, light industrial in G1 and
In
G2.
G1,
Yep. And just so everybody knows, this is Michaela Edgecombe, a new planner in the planning department.
Welcome.
Stop by.
All right, so we're on board with that recommendation from this committee that we change it to Gateway 1. Okay. Moving on, we have, the whole row, and I've been taking these together because they're all side by side, and they're all right up on Lafayette Road, and this is the 2032 Lafayette Road through 1700 Lafayette Road. So we're talking, it's, yeah, exactly, that whole strip between the Market Basket Plaza all the way down to what goes out to Community Campus Road. And those, for some reason, have all been office research. And we thought changing them to Gateway 1 made a whole lot more sense. They can still do just about everything you can do in office research in Gateway 1 plus some. So I don't think there's been any
Is there
argument
anything they can't do?
between,
In Gateway 1 versus office research?
not really, not from what we looked at previously. I mean,
Yeah.
I think office research, you might be able to do a hospital, but these lots are so small. You can still do a clinic and
Okay.
not like, so there's.
Like Atlantic and all of that, okay.
In
Yeah.
G1, you can do a clinic. In G2,
Okay.
yep.
There's just no overnight stays, which none of those places already are, so. Next is 2075 Lafayette Road, which is technically in the single residence B district, but it has 48 units on it, and it seems to make a whole lot of sense to move it to a district that actually makes it more compliant than it is at this moment in time.
you get a
All right.
variance for that?
They did, yeah. Yeah, they did get a variance for that. CBA gave them one. So 1035 Lafayette Road, this is the church that's kind of across from that dealership in Marona Road. The
And it
entrance is,
butts the urban forestry.
it's right alongside the urban forestry, and for some reason, this has also been the single residence B, which doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense since it's not compliant either. It does have, over 3 acres, and it would make sense, I think, to be the gateway as well. And there seem to be no arguments amongst these members.
G2, not G1?
I put G1. We could do G2. I make an argument as to why it should be G2 and not G1, because that's a G2 across the street.
Yeah, we were just thinking that it'd be,
To be more compatible.
Sure. I will make that note. And then we move on to 545 Lafayette Road. That is, this is the dentist's office. I'm like trying to remember what the heck it is. So this is the dentist's office when you skip the bypass and you make that right-hand turn just beyond Tor. And I believe the parcel just beyond it, the next one, so 7 and 8 are side by side. So they are the vacant lot that is then just behind it. And we had talked about either doing these to G1 or G2. Thoughts, problems?
The church has been working on that for a long time. We're back and forth to try to put something. Am I understanding that right?
yes.
Yes, they have.
It was always a zoning issue,
Yes,
or
it
an
has been.
abutter issue / zoning issue.
Yeah, and the municipal zone, which is abuts it, is really effectively not a municipal zone in the sense that you can't really get to the school through that zone. So that's kind of an artifact of what used to be there, I think.
Right, because that actually goes to the apartments that are right there.
Right, it comes down here.
It's here.
Yep.
Yep. And that is G1 that's right
Extending that
across.
G1.
Yep. Do we have any arguments or problems with that? All right.
So
That-
G1 for both?
There's no G2 in that area, so I think we'd have to go G1. Yep. That would be my thoughts anyways. So that's 7 and 8 on our list. That brings us up to 9. which is 500 US, we're on the bypass, and this is 3 acres in the industrial and GRA, switching to G1, and I'm trying to remember what this one is. It's a car dealership,
It's a
yeah.
card, yeah, auto dealer.
Is that
That's
the
right, this
Mazda
is-
dealership?
No, it's the one on the corner of Cottage.
Cadillac or something.
It's the Cadillac, thank you. GM, it's a GM. Like,
Yeah.
we'll all come up with it eventually, right? So yes, that's,
the other side of the road?
that's a hotel.
And, I'm sorry,
It's also on our list, believe it or not.
because that's being redeveloped.
It has been proposed, it hasn't actually,
Gone, yeah.
it hasn't actually come through. It's just been initial consultation, so it's far from a done deal, let's put it that way. So yes, but I believe that's also on our list, is across the street as well.
And what is the proposal for that parcel?
Taking it from industrial and GRA to G1. Because it's in 2 zones right now. The car dealership itself, but it also has that other land around it that would also,
Yeah.
that's in the GRA, that's by their entrance. For some reason, that little part of their entrance is in GRA versus, so if you look at, the lot actually ends where that driveway comes in. If you look then at our sheets that we have.
Right.
So we would just take the whole lot and take it to G1, which is, of course, right across Hodgson Way from them as well.
And if you want to keep it compatible with the hotel use, the special exception for the hotel is G1. G2 allows hotels up to 250 rooms by special exception, and then bigger hotels up to 500 or more than 500 rooms, conference centers, conference hotels, they're not permitted. So G1 would be more hotel-friendly, I guess, would be an easy way to put it, than G2. If you were trying to keep it consistent with the use across the street and.
Right,
on
the
other
uses
side
in the
of
area.
Cottage, yeah, or a little beyond Cottage.
Well, and right across the Cottage Street from that is actually number 10. That's 185 Cottage Street, which is and I said G1 or G2, but I think G1 would make sense. That's the medical building that's right across in that little triangular shaped piece. Yep. So do we agree G1 seems to make the most sense?
I think G1 makes the most sense.
How is it better for hotels, again, Peter? You said
G1 can have hotels and conference, up to over 500 room or person hotels and conference centers and conference hotels.
As of right?
G2, no, special exception.
Okay.
And G2, special exception up to under 500, then once you hit the bigger thresholds, it's not permitted. No conference hotels permitted, so they would need a variance.
What about mixed use?
And what-
Any difference there?
I think that the G1 allows for like clinics and,
I have this.
or by special exception, clinics and ambulatory care, where G2 is not permitted. And then I thought there was a
Trying to open the zoning analysis I did.
restaurant.
The restaurant uses are smaller in G2 than they are in G1, as far as seats go.
So
Yeah.
Probably makes more sense for G1 out there then.
I think it does.
You're abutting single-family residences.
On both sides, on the Cottage side and when you cross the street on Coakley.
Sure.
No, it's general business across the street.
Here, let me open that.
Well,
Yeah.
but right behind that,
It's general business, both of those, but I'm toying, we have those on our list to talk about too. The
you're
list is long.
abutting a GRA zone, right?
Yep.
And so do you want to potentially put a big hotel next to those homes? Or
So,
should you be more, I don't know, cognizant of what's around you there? You know?
Well, those properties are oriented to the bypass, which is very different than how those homes are oriented. So there is a difference.
Well, I'm talking about the car dealer.
Right.
So behind the car dealer and abutting the car dealer, I think maybe they own some of those houses anyway.
They do.
But
He just said they do.
I don't know.
That just bears the question of how the process will work. That are you going to be going in for a full slate that will include, first reading, second reading, some kind of amendment that will include all of these parcels, or is it going to be like one by one? Just thinking about residential abutters like that, in a situation like that, you may get more pushback at that location, and I don't know that that's true, but
Well-
would it sink the rest of them?
Not necessarily. I think that it depends on, the pushback that happens. I think that then we reevaluate what goes where. Obviously, we can't have an outlier, so the things around it are going to have to, there can't be, one that's a single-family neighborhood surrounded by something that's not. So we're going to have to, take a look at the whole picture as well as individual lots.
Okay, thank you.
It's zoned industrial now, right?
Yeah.
Yes, which is totally an outlier.
Yeah, that doesn't fit at all.
Right.
Because it's office research, G1, and general business, so it needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
The question is, what do we fix it to? And it would make most sense to do a district that's near it, in my mind.
In a district that is accommodating to the high traffic volumes and the easy access off the highway, which you saw the higher density development go in there, but there's development pressures right now or interest for some of these properties to be brought into some of its the existing drive-in, the hotel or being updated with a more modern hotel, and there's interest, I think, for uses that would take advantage of the location more on the Route 1 and the Hodgkin Way in terms of access as opposed to the residential driveways and things like that. So we were thinking that the G1 would be conducive to supporting that type of redevelopment when it does occur. The dentist office that's in the GRA right now is fairly new, and it's not that big, but it's somewhat of a smaller lot with the parking and everything else.
And the West End Yards is across the creek, so it's not accessible from that site, but it's close.
I think this begs the question of whether the tail of the GRA along Cottage Street should remain GRA, or if that should become GR1 as well, because if you develop the larger purple parcel, you don't want to have a bunch of driveways on Route 1. It would make more sense to consolidate and use Cottage Street a little bit more for access.
Right.
I think I'd lean towards pushing it up to the street.
When you say pushing it up the street, you mean
GR1.
including those individual lots on Cottage Street in the GR1.
G1?
So adding
Right here?
those.
Yeah.
Yeah, like somewhere in there, maybe up by parcel or something.
Right, we'd have to break it off by parcels. It's like 2 parcels.
Wherever the line is in there.
2 houses in that, and then
Yeah.
the rest of the dealership.
Right, would be the rest of the dealership.
That can increase the value of those lots.
Do you think that the dealership owns those houses?
I believe so.
You don't have to check it. It shouldn't drive our decision anyway. I'm just curious.
Yep, I think so. That one.
Well, you either do 2 or 3. I don't know. Which,
Yes.
1, 2,
Yes on the first one.
4, 3. You mean this one being 3?
Yeah, the first one's part of the
This one's part of the dealership, so 1,
Yeah.
2, 3, or just these
So,
2? Yeah, that's
Definitely
I think those two.
just these 2. Yeah.
Yeah. Because then if we're also doing the one next to the municipal lot. Choose the next one.
wonder who owns the third one. I think the car dealer owns.
I don't think it matters who owns them. I think it matters
No,
whether
but
or
I
not
mean,
it
just
works.
In general, what's going to happen there?
They'll come in to want to get it rezoned to GR1, that's what'll happen.
That's exactly right.
All right, so to 500 Route 1 bypass, we're also going to add the 2 house lots along Cottage, and we're going to recommend G1. Then 185 Cottage, we're also in agreement to recommend G1, which is across the street. And then that brings us across the bypass to the hotel across the street that's in the general business. And either, I put G1 or G2 because I don't, either one could work, but if we're going to stick with G1 at the dealership, I think we have to stick with G1 across the street as
Yeah.
well, which makes sense.
That would allow a bigger,
Right, because the next 2 are those 2, the hotel plus the new dealership that's right on the traffic circle, which are both general business. And it's not much of a difference, it just expands the housing options with what they already are doing, so. Staff didn't have any issues with those 2, right?
No, and we point out that it adds more flexibility on housing, but there's still environmental constraints that permeate with a lot of these properties along Route 1. In
Right.
terms of the wetlands. And so saying that more housing could happen by
It's not-
zone, yes, but on the ground, it would be just as much of a challenge for any other use.
Correct, it would.
And that sales of motor vehicles are special exception in G1 where they're not permitted in G2, so.
So G1
G1's
definitely
better.
makes more sense, yep.
Mayor?
All right, that takes us through number 12.
Counselor, can I go back to Cottage Street for just a moment?
Sure.
113 Cottage Street, which is in front of the senior center.
Oh, the one that's the city owns.
Right, it's a 2-bedroom ranch right now.
Yep.
But arguably.
It's GRA, right
Yeah, if there were to be something that would happen in the future, there at the
Senior Center.
senior center, then that might end up being of value to be something more flexible than.
Shouldn't that be listed as
Should be
municipal?
municipal. Yeah,
It should
it's
be listed as
automatically
municipal
municipal.
anyways. It shouldn't be listed as GRA right now because it's owned by the city.
It's owned by the city. And
So
that's-
that automatically changes the zone?
Yep. And it just hasn't made it onto this map yet,
Okay.
but we can get that updated to municipal.
Good.
He'll make that note. All right, now where were we? All the way down to, one more hotel on Borthwick that's behind the hotel that's across from the car dealership. I think it's like the Fairfield. That's also in general business. Down one more.
then on another,
That one, yeah.
Page.
So whether or not extending that to be the G2, can you bring up the other screen? Because I'm curious what's on the far side of that. I can't remember. I think it's all general business. That's why I think I brought it in, is because they're all in that same general business, so we would be,
It's hotel, I think, wellness
grant,
supply
it's a
or-
business.
Business, yeah.
Yep. I think changing that whole area would make more sense.
Yeah, I agree, changing it all to.
Right, if it's all general business, then switching all of that whatever is general business right there.
G1.
To G1, right, yeah.
there's 3, there's a
There
industrial
is-
kind of building and then
Yeah.
hotel.
And then you have office research just on the other side, which becomes what we talk about in 14. Oh, wait, no, 14 is the one just beyond the hotel. And then 15 is the entire lot on that one. And then 16. Oh, is Boyd Road. We did talk about Boyd Road. We're all in the same general area. So the Boyd Road is where there's just literally signs and parking. There's no structure or anything there. It's just beyond the senior center and the new medical building that's right there.
Right, the hotel owns it.
Correct. They use it for overflow parking. And it's general business, yeah.
We had some discussion, the Peters and I, about doing some deeper thinking on if it gets changed to a G1 or just changed to business. So,
So it's in general business now.
Right, and if we were to change general business into something that's just like a business zone and readjust what that zone is, similar to the way there's some early thought about what the industrial zone is and further defining that to contemporary standards of light and heavy industry. So it's just something that came up in a high-level thinking.
I've been thinking about, do we need general business at all anymore? Because it was mostly used downtown, which we've changed to character districts, and we have very few lots that actually are general business anymore, which is why I've kind of included a lot of them in this to try to talk about maybe we don't need that zone as a whole.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe,
We might want to look at G1 then and just make sure we're including the right uses for G1, because we don't want to zone them out, if they're there now. I'd have to be careful
Correct.
about that.
yes, and that is part of the analysis that I had done. There is an analysis side by side of general business, the two gateways side by side, and you can compare then to industrial, general business, office research. I have done that with all the uses, so I can send that to you if that's helpful. We looked at it 2 meetings ago, I think.
Okay.
It was the start of our talking about this and what had similar uses or very close to it, so I can certainly send that on as well. But I do think that is something we need to look at, because the general business is mostly just around the traffic circle at this point.
Yeah, right.
And there's no, everything else is turned into a character district.
It's a legacy designation.
It was used greatly downtown, but then when we changed downtown, it was just, I don't see it anywhere otherwise in our city except around this traffic circle. So yes, I think we need to do the analysis of all of those lots that are general business now. And maybe if they compare to G1 as far as uses, maybe we just move, because I have all of them, I think, in our list to look at least most of them. If I missed any, then I apologize. It was my intention is to try to include them all.
Counselor, can I suggest, or just give a point of information on one other lot here that's owned by the Portsmouth Housing Authority? I haven't done the zoning research to understand, but it's at the corner of Woodbury Avenue and Boyd Road, right there.
That's in GRA.
Yeah, that's in GRA. I don't know if that's an existing non-conforming use. That's 40 units of public housing. There's 10 different buildings there. That is one that we've identified that has some potential for redevelopment. Very small, potential just because of the size of the lot and where it is. One thing that's interesting about it is that strip of land that is on satellite view is a paper street that's municipally owned, and then of course the senior center there is municipally zoned. So there's potentially some, again, very small, some opportunity there to add some housing if it were, I know sometimes we're trying to change zones to make the zone consistent with what's already there. And I don't know if general residence A is the actual use in that zone.
You can certainly ask staff to look at
Yeah.
that and let us know.
Yeah. Let's look closer. If Peter Stitz were here,
He might know off the top of his
we'd know
head.
off the top of his head. Apologize.
One Peter just knows a little bit more in depth than the other
That's for
Peter.
sure.
It's not your side of the house. It's all
It
good.
says Manor Drive.
I mean, we'll have to do more work on this in order to get it to its next
Yep.
level, no matter what. So, and I can also sit down with you guys and we can go over it all. But we can certainly, I can add that to the possibility. Okay. Sorry, just making my list of things to do later. So yes, so once again, continuing on the general business, that's, if you go to 17, that is just the corner right on the traffic circle, the hotel, the other thing, and then the hotel up behind it. Those are the next two. And then I follow to the other side of the traffic circle to the other general business lots.
So change all that GB to G1.
That's what this whole list is that we're moving, if we confirm with staff that GB is, all those uses are included in G1, I think that that makes sense to move those to that. Because the most of them are all general business now. And there's even some housing in there that's on Farm Lane that is GB, but it's 2 apartment buildings, right? So it would probably make more sense to move it, because I don't think there is any housing allowed in that specific GB, but. So yeah, so our next several right through 22 are all just those lots all the way up on the Spalding Turnpike that I believe are all general business, general business, general business. Right to the one on Echo Ave, number 24, general business. Till we get to Oriental Gardens, number 25.
Can I just
Yep.
ask, so we're kind of stopped at Echo. What about like Bed Bath and Beyond, that area?
Those
What is
are,
that
I
zone?
believe, already
That
in.
one's G1.
Yep, they're already actually in gateway districts.
Oh, okay.
That's why
Yeah,
I
just-
skipped over them.
Couldn't remember.
Yep, they are actually already in G1, all of that area.
Okay.
So
Actually, even the
Thank you.
Home Depot.
even the Home Depot, yep, all of that is all gateway, all the way up to Gosling Road to Woodbury Ave. It's all G1. So that's why now when you skip across Woodbury, you get Oriental Gardens, which is in office research, which
Yeah.
totally doesn't make sense. So there was a talk about actually moving that, not to Gateway, but to Garden Apartment Mobile Home, so that it would actually be conforming
Yeah.
to what it is, which would probably, I think, make life easier for them. We thought while we were doing this, we'd actually put them in a zone that matched what the current use is. It would be helpful. We thought so. So that's why we added it. And then there's the 114 on Gosling Road, which is just behind, which we thought we would. It's also office research that we thought we should put to Gateway, which is then, I believe, next to the gate, right? It's right in there. Nope, it's right behind Oriental Gardens. Is that right
That
there?
is-
That.
Oh, I'm sorry, yep.
That building
Yep,
right there.
It's in the office research. Yeah,
It's in office research, but we thought we should move it to Gateway since it's right next to a gateway.
Yeah, and that's just a little.
Yeah.
out-
That little
a pump
outlier.
station, that's why I was confused, but that's not.
There is a tiny little municipal lot. We're talking about the lot around it. Yep. So that's what 114 Gosling Road, number 26. And then we really jump to a totally different place. And this is 27 is because most of Woodbury is already Gateway, so that's why we don't deal with that. Rite Aid, though, oddly enough, is into a land unto itself. We go down Woodbury. Nope, you went towards water.
I know. The computer's a little
Slow.
persnickety today.
Persnickety. I hate it when they're persnickety. So yeah, we have a lot of gateway that goes down until you then right there at Woodbury and Market. We have a split zone of MRB and gateway, and we thought we'd just make the whole thing gateway since it's a split zone, and that's truly the
Okay, so that red is the
Rite Aid.
gateway?
That's gateway,
One.
and so we're just taking that strip and adding it also to the gateway because it seemed to make the most sense where it already was
Right.
gateway right there as well.
Yeah, this is, yeah, MRB.
Why it was a split zone. Yeah.
Looks like a mistake.
I'm trying to fix what I think is a mistake. Exactly.
I think, yeah, I think it's because there's houses along here.
I think there isn't anymore.
There was, yeah, there was, used to
And
be
they're
a row of
gone.
houses, yep,
Yep.
yep. And
The Rite Aid took all of
Rite
that
Aid
and
took
took
that.
them all down. But you're right. I think in the past that was the
MRB where
case.
the mobile home park is,
I didn't even take a look at that. You're saying move it to
sort of,
mobile home.
yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
if you make that change.
I can add that to my
Conforming.
list. Hang on.
Snug Cove.
And,
or Avenue.
Very.
Is that mobile home area still active, or is that?
Oh, it's a
where-
co-op.
It was just redeveloped.
Just
co-op
redeveloped as a co-op.
Yeah, they just renovated the whole thing.
Right. I asked because I saw the renovation. I didn't
Oh,
know if
right.
it was coming or going, but
No, it's
it's
coming.
staying, so.
It's staying,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and that's fine, so.
And then next to it, is, or a couple commercial
Buildings,
buildings. So I don't know if that should be,
right. Whether or not we keep it.
Changed
It's
or
mixed
not.
residential business, so,
This here?
right.
it's probably okay.
It's next to an SRB.
Okay.
So changing the larger sized MRB lot over to MH and keeping the MRB designation on the corner of Echo
I
and
think
Woodbury.
maybe I would take a staff recommendation as
We
to
need to look
what's.
at that, please.
Look at it and let us know what you
Look at-
think.
Well, right,
Look at these
I'm
lots.
just trying to clarify what the recommendation of the committee is to staff.
Well, I think that
Look
we
at
have a
this.
mobile home park in a mixed residential business, and then we have those businesses, and I think a residence in mixed residential business, does it make sense to leave that pocket of MRB, or does it make sense to try to shift it to a more conforming zoning? And what's more conforming, right?
Right.
To what's existing there now. And, you know, in connection with what's around it as well. That would be, I think, our question. And then I think our last one, I take us back across the bypass to 200 Greenleaf Ave, which got missed in our earlier discussions, but it does make sense. It's a lot, outlier lot that's next to a gateway that we didn't really take a look at. No, we're talking, you're in the, got to go out to the bypass.
It's off of Green, right, this one here, right? This one here?
Correct, yes. You got it, right there. So it's right behind a G1 district already,
Yeah.
and it's in an SRB, and it's not SRB, it's actually a business, so it doesn't make sense to leave it in SRB when we could continue the G1 down. That one lot. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that was the last one on my list, on my short list, believe it or not.
What about all the other office research parcels? Like,
I
there was some
think
down
once we
Commerce Way
finalize,
or
I think what,
Portsmouth Boulevard or whatever it is.
right, I think once we finalize this list and move it forward, we can then look what's left, because we had a whole nother list
Yeah,
that
there was
was
the
going to
one
be a
down
longer
by,
conversation, and so I
That way
haven't,
As well, yeah.
I haven't finalized that list. I was working on this one first, but yes, we'll keep having this conversation. It's just a matter of, we got to take it off in small enough chunks that we can actually get it processed, right?
No argument there.
If we do the whole city at the same time, it's just too much. It's too much. So we're good on this list, and we're ready to move on to next on our agenda, which is the home occupation definition discussion. So we have had some previous discussion about our home occupation and what it allows and what it doesn't allow. Then we looked at other jurisdictions and what they allow and what they don't allow. We picked a couple, and I came up with sort of this based off of looking at some of the other jurisdictions. And I'm not saying this is what we're going to have, but I wanted to start our conversation with, if we're going to expand it, I think I liked the idea of expanding it to actually 3. So you have the general sort of definitions and requirements, and then the 3, which then expands on each of that. And it's, I know I've looked at it, so I'm curious, has anyone else read it? Does anyone have any feedback? Because from this point, if there's anything on this we absolutely don't want, then I think we need to take it out. If there's anything on this list we do want, then I would send it both to planning and to legal, so that they could then make it jive with all, because there's obviously other areas, and they may have more questions that come back once they sort of review turning what we have now. And it wasn't even worth doing red line, because I was just blowing up the whole thing. I truly just blew up the whole entire definition, and I thought, let's start with a new definition. If we can get a new definition that we're all happy with, then we can look at where it's allowed and all the other things that we have that has to jive with the zoning. So start that conversation. Who would like
We
to?
have someone in the waiting room.
Oh, thank you.
It's hard to pay attention to all those little things.
Oh, I know.
So, members, feedback, conversation, anything.
I'll start. I think you broke it up quite well with the different sizes. You know, I mean, the 500 square foot being home occupation 2, and then the 1,000, and then going up to 8 pupils if you're teaching a class of some sort. I was just trying to think of any home occupation that I currently know of or that I know someone wants to do that wouldn't fit in one of these 3, and I couldn't come up with one, so,
Well, that's good.
yeah.
So these might be a good working start, right?
Yes, definitely a good starting point.
Anyone else? Feedback?
The only feedback I have is in terms of signage.
Yeah.
4 square feet is 2 by 2, but I would say, or ask rather, if there were to be anything added in there about any other form of advertisement would not be allowed, so there couldn't be any type of temporary sign that would go up announcing a sale or or specials or anything like that. It's just signage only pertaining to the home occupation. Any other form of advertisement, it would not be allowed.
Wind guys that goes up.
Right. Yeah, nope. I'm trying
Wave a
to
little
figure out where that
alarm
is.
That wouldn't apply to like real estate signs and stuff, right?
Those are temporary signs.
Yeah, okay, just making sure.
Yep.
Thinking out loud.
Technically aren't blow-up guys temporary signs?
They are temporary signs, but they're not, they wouldn't be allowed. I think real estate signs are called out specifically.
In our sign
I think
thing.
so.
Yeah. So those would be one of the things I'd be looking for when staff, planning, and legal take a look at it to make sure that we have the appropriate language that matches with our existing zoning as far as signs and where things are allowed and that sort of thing. I didn't go that deep into it. I just wanted a working framework that we could then present and get them to work on. But yeah, signage, one sign, so making sure that we don't. That makes sense.
Yeah, the good example of that is there is a bicycle repair business being operated on Elwyn Ave, kind of between Rockland and Lincoln Ave, and using his garage, but his sign is essentially the trailer that he used to bring bikes around. So I don't know how you guys deal with that kind of thing, but I know there's been.
That's one of those ways people always got around the
Yeah.
sign.
Yeah.
Park the
Right.
truck in the parking lot near the road.
Yeah, right.
Anything else besides signage to look at?
I like the idea of the 3 tiers. I think there's some things that need some refinement. You've got some good starting
point.
blocks to go. But like barn sales, I think that needs some,
Well, and I wasn't, it happened to be in the zoning that I was looking at, so I thought, there could be somebody that might want to sell something, so I didn't want to totally discount it, but we could completely take it out if we feel like it's
no,
inappropriate.
I'm not suggesting it comes out
Bless you.
now. I just think that it
Needs some
I would see some
changes?
refinement, just because looking at it from the perspective of a developer's hat, which I've had to wear several times, I see it as a big window that may not want to be open that wide.
That wide, yep.
And then the classes, do we want to talk about a difference in pupil age? Because I'm thinking about parking, and, it's one thing to have students, young students versus, I don't know.
Well, adequate parking, I think you deal with that as far as the actual, in the parking section, which I know needs a lot of work, but I think we have to tie it in with our actual parking and do it that way. That would be one of the things that so what I want us to do is be able to say, okay, let's send this to planning and legal, whether it's at the same time or you guys and then legal, to really tie in, okay, well, we need to add these things to make sure that the parking's adequate. Because really, I've just put in here that it would be adequate parking, right? So adequate parking must be provided either on-street or on-site as determined.
But even
By the
that, adequate
department.
parking from the perspective of somebody who wants to do this use might be different than what the neighbors might think.
Yeah.
Oh, it
You
absolutely
know,
might be.
So, again, it's refinement.
I was thinking the same thing. We're going to have to look closely at how the parking standards come through and that we're protecting the neighborhood from, if there's 8 people
Right.
parking cars every day,
That's a
that could
problem.
be a burden.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we don't have any blatant issues with it, it was my big hope that we would just be able to say, okay, this is our framework, our concerns are parking, signage, and ask planning and sustainability to take a first crack at refining this a bit, and then we'll send it to legal, and then back to us. So we can then take a look at what the final product is and decide whether or not from there it works or doesn't work. But I thought starting with some definitions would be a good starting point. Any other complaints?
Not a complaint. No.
Because, I think Mr. Chelman said he'd do this for me, and he didn't, so I did it. He's like, oh, maybe I did. I was like, well, he didn't send me anything, so I'll take a stab at it. But I do think this is at least a starting point. All right, if we have no other members that want to say anything, we are up to public input. Are there any members of the public that are in the room that would like to come and give us some input?
Have some input. Good morning, everybody.
As always, just speak into the microphone and give us your
Yes.
name and address.
Liza Hewitt, 726 Middle Road. Liz Bratter couldn't be here today, but she did, yes, as far as I know. But she did send me what she wanted me to pass along to all of you. So I got my printer to work, and here you go. And I just point out that she says, please take your time and consider, this is on the zoning, consider the whole donut, not just the donut hole. G1 has many advantages, but it is not necessarily the best fit for all of these proposed lots. So she's broken them down as far as what she was able to get to. I'm sure she'll have more going forward, but I just wanted to make sure that I did what she asked and I got it out to all of you. So my focus on the zoning piece, as I've said before, I don't really know anything about zoning, but I do sit in these meetings and I do listen to all of you intently, trying to learn more. And I feel like as this process goes forward, and I know it's going to be going through the planning board, so there will be more availability for engagement. But for residents who want to engage, it would be really helpful if somewhere, and I don't know how you would do this, I mean, I'd like it plastered across this screen up here so I could see it as you were discussing it. If you could have definitions for G1, G2, GB, whatever, you all know what you're talking about, and residents have no idea what you're talking about. So it becomes very difficult, and this happens all the time, in meetings and discussions, that those people that you want to understand need to have some reference point. And so just for a resident that knows nothing about zoning, listening to your discussion today, just went, because I have no definitions for what you were talking about. So that would be very helpful. Again, I don't know how you'll do that, whether it's at the planning board meeting, you can hand out a sheet that describes that as you're talking, but that would be very helpful. I think I asked at the last meeting, if you could provide some information about what your criteria is for changing these zonings, because again, as a resident just sitting here listening to you, I know that you must have something in your head about, oh, well, we'll just take this and we'll change it to G1 because it's sitting next to GB and G3 is over here across the street. And so this just makes sense. And that to me really isn't criteria. And I just can't figure out how these decisions are being made. I know the planning board the planning department is discussing it, amongst their people, which is very important in bringing back some of the recommendations. But again, as a resident, I can't figure out why you're making these changes. And so I'm sure that I'm not just the only one that would sit and wonder about that. So maybe by the time it gets to the planning board, there'll be some criteria, because it seems very haphazard to me. Again, just a person sitting in the audience listening to your discussion. The other thing, too, is You just spoke about how, you're going to break it down, or, you're not going to talk about a certain area now because you feel that, you want it to be in a bite-sized piece. To me, this seems gigantic. This discussion, to me, feels like it's taking up every business in, you're talking about every business in Portsmouth as you talk down Lafayette and down Woodbury Avenue. And I would ask you, and I don't know whether you can do this, I know you want to move things along. I understand that. I know everything takes a long time. This is a huge number of zoning changes. I mean, you think about how long it took to go through the couple that Nick Cracknell did before he left. That was very, you were talking about 6 municipal properties and a couple changing the height on it. This, you're talking about, a lot of properties, and these properties, while maybe you don't live near them, so it doesn't feel like they are too close to residences, they are. There are residences along Lafayette. There are condos along Lafayette. All of those people are going to be impacted by all of these changes you're making, and I just wish that you could take it in a more bite-sized chunk, maybe separate out your discussion and your public hearings on Woodbury Avenue changes versus the ones on Lafayette versus putting them all together, because I think you're going to confuse residents. I think that they're going to, once they figure this out, what's being discussed here, they're going to want to get involved, especially as it impacts where they live. So that would be all that I ask, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And anyone on Zoom that would like to speak?
Yes, I would. This is Karen Rosania. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, first, I just wanted to thank all of you for all the hard work that you've been doing around home occupation. So my name is Karen Rosania. I spoke at the last meeting.
Could you just give us
a
your
fairly
address?
new resident of Portsmouth. I've only been in Portsmouth about 2 years.
Can you please give us your address for the record?
Yes, 32 Boss Avenue. I am an artist and I am a small business owner here in Portsmouth. And really what I'm trying to represent is not only myself as an artist, but really represent broader artists in the community and solve for the bigger issue, which is really to try to keep, attract and retain artists back to Portsmouth. We, as I mentioned in the last meeting, I've also been operating as the co-chair for the Cultural Plan Subcommittee. We have some pretty solid data from the last cultural plan that we've seen a mass exodus of artists. There were issues raised by residents at that time that there's too many zoning barriers for artists, and we need more work-living options for artists. And we do have some preliminary data that is coming in literally as we speak that is suggesting a lot of these same issues for artists still exist. And that was based on some pretty extensive community surveys that went out, as well as focus group participation. So with that, I just wanted to say, though, I do think that this is extremely well done. I do have a couple of suggestions, and I'll start with 6 and 10 and kind of combine it with regards to parking, knowing that this is obviously an issue across the city. But I would like to put out there just, I think, a need that we should have accessibility and inclusion factored into this. So when I think about parking, I mean, I purchased our property because I have a lot of frontage of parking in front of my house with, again, the dream of hoping to have an art studio accessible to the public. But I think about, I'd love to have seniors come into my classes. I would love to have individuals with different mobility challenges be able to come into my classes and be accessible. So I do think we need to have some parking that is close to what would be your studio entrance, just to make that as accessible as possible. And I think somewhere in the zoning ordinance currently, I believe we've got language, I want to say for residential properties, but if we could think about if you come 10 feet in from each side of your property line, could that be possible parking that we could be thinking about? So in other words, the property itself is going to dictate what parking could be available for your particular residence. So if we're coming in 10 feet from each side, I can still probably fit 6 or 7 cars parallel parking. Other properties might be able to fit 1. I mean, so could the property kind of dictate that? And also, I think we have to keep in mind, at least from an artist perspective, that when people are parking out in front of your home, which, by the way, I rarely have anybody ever parking out in front of my home. When my kids are home, maybe, but otherwise that space is wide open. But think about if we're talking about at least artists anyway, that's going to be temporary parking. Somebody's going to be there for a couple hours out of the day, and that's it. So I just wanted to put that on the radar. And then I do think, in the spirit of climate action, could we also be putting some language in here to consider greener options of transportation? Could we have a sentence in there? Again, I think it'd be tough to make this mandatory depending on the property, but that you consider maybe having a bike rack available on your residence so that people can bike to classes that are being conducted within your property. So those are some of my thoughts when it comes to parking, hours of operation, as we discussed last time. Again, when it comes to accessibility and just trying to work around working parents, working adults, if this only goes until 7, you're really talking, if somebody gets out of work at 5, that they have maybe 2 hours to attend a class themselves or 2 hours to get a child out of class. Could we consider maybe 5 to, sending that to 8? But I know myself, I am not planning on offering classes every day of the week in the evening. So maybe it's 2 to 3 weekday evenings, no later than 8 o'clock or something. So again, you're just allowing enough time for an art class for working individuals. And then with regards, there were a couple comments about signage, and I do think there's some opportunity to compromise here. When I think about offering art classes in my home studio, I would like to have the mantra that you're not even going to know we're even in there. And I think that's what we're trying to create here with this ordinance. So when it comes to signage, I mean, I would be in support of smaller signage, and I especially say that now with the internet and maps. You should have your address readily available on the internet, or you would hope you would be pretty easy to find. So I think we could make the signage smaller, and certainly I would envision something very, very tastefully done, and just where somebody could at least recognize they're at the right location. But I don't foresee putting a big sign up if this were to get approved. So I think keeping that on small scale would be appropriate. So those are, I think those are my thoughts, but I think overall the rest of it looked very good. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Anyone else that would like to speak? Maureen, if you could please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Maureen Mills, 911 Greenland Road. I support the things that Karen said too, and wanted to say something about parking and I'm assuming the parking and the limit of students is sort of connected, but we have the better part of 3/4 of an acre and plenty of room for plenty of cars. We're Potters. It's a really different kind of classroom situation, and there's some variability there in numbers that make it profitable. So I don't know if that's an outside limit as opposed to, or an opportunity to readdress with the committee or whoever reviews that, how many could actually be there. I know there are a lot of, I don't know how many people would be interested in this at all, but for our situation, the property really does sort of support the kind of numbers we were hoping for incomes. And also the hours for that. I've been doing a lot of research about what their pottery studio for club, and they very typically run in the afternoon and in the evening, but that's like 6 to 9. Like Karen, cars are in our yard. There's no more parking on the street on Greenland Road since we have these lovely new sidewalks. So they're just in and out of our yard, and we're by the highway. So the there's a surprising amount of traffic going down our street already. That cars leaving our driveway as near to the corner as we are. I don't really think it's an issue, but anyway, I just want to say that as a sort of consideration for the variability of what might be presented and how to manage what that usage might actually be. That's all I
Great.
wanted to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak from the public online? Please either raise your virtual hand or real hand. I don't see anyone else looking to speak, so I will. Is there any other last-minute thoughts from this group?
Just the hours, I guess I hadn't really thought about that, but I would be in favor of later hours. I mean, I could see someone taking a class at someone's house till 9 o'clock.
Right. So we'll look at hours being later, or maybe we limit that to how many nights a week someone can do later.
Yeah.
I was thinking that, and I was also thinking after listening to them, maybe we actually need to also look at the consideration of the size of the property. And I don't know how we'll do that, but I'll leave that to the staff to give us a recommendation on. If you have, if you're in a really rural setting and you have lots of space and there's no one around you you're going to be bothering, maybe there could be a special exception for something like that, and we can build that into it.
Okay.
All right. If there's nothing else from this group, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Our next meeting will be the first Friday in December, and I don't know off the top of my head what that date is. December 1st. Yay.
We have a
EDC,
EDC and we are at the high school until.
and it starts late.
So,
Yeah, we wouldn't be here until,
9:45.
yeah.
so we're most likely going to have to move the meeting to later. Is that a problem for anyone else?
Or to the 8th.
I'd have to look at my calendar before I could answer that. I will see about this room, and if it's available to move it out an hour to 10 o'clock, that would work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so let's plan on tentatively, we're just going to move it out an hour if the room's available. Otherwise, I will email the city clerk to find out what the schedule is if we need to move the whole day, if we can't. But plan on 10 o'clock on December 1st. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
Great.